Perhaps we'll get started. So thanks again to all of you for coming today, and also for those people who are joining us online. My name is Andrew Cutting. I'm in charge of communication at the Brussels office of the Council of Europe. Welcome to this presentation about part of the Council of Europe that I, to be honest, don't know all that much about, the European Directorate for the Quality of Medicines and Healthcare, EDQM, it's much easier to say. So today we're going to be celebrating 60 years of EDQM's work in protecting public health across most of Europe and also beyond. We're going to be having a quick discussion about some of the key challenges that the EDQM is currently working on, future initiatives, and its strategic goals. I believe a new midterm strategy is recently been launched. And we'll also talk a bit about how the EDQM relates with the European Union, which is obviously of interest to many people here in Brussels. And then we will finish with a short question and answer session. I've introduced myself already. I'm sorry I'm behind on the clicker. Just to introduce you to the lineup here. So to my left is Petra Durr, who's the director of the EDQM. Then we have Laurent Mallet, who has a rather long job title, the head of the Biological Standardization Official Medicines Control Laboratories Network and Healthcare Department at EDQM. And finally, Marie-Laure Ecquet, who is a policy advisor. So on that note, I will hand over to Petra.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining us here in Brussels and online. I'm going to cover the first part of the presentation with a focus on EDQM's contribution on public health. This is something that we have been working on over the last 60 years, as Andrew already mentioned. We are going to start by a short introduction to the EDQM and the Council of Europe and how its work is related to this parent organization. The Council of Europe, as such, has been founded in 1949 as the oldest intergovernmental institution on the continent. It is based in Strasbourg, currently has 46 member states, and its member states cover a population of 700 million citizens. The EDQM, in short, is part of the Council of Europe and is a major entity, a major administrative entity of the organization since September 2022, reporting directly into the Secretary General of the Council of Europe. Now, a few key figures. The EDQM as such, as we said, is celebrating its 60th anniversary. It was founded in 1964. It is based on a partial agreement which consists of 39 of the 46 member states of the Council of Europe, and also the European Union is a member of this partial agreement, which is the European Pharmacopoeia Convention. Also 33 observer countries contribute to the activities of the EDQM, and you can see the world map. Here the observer countries are spread out across the globe, and they cover all continents. The EDQM contributes to the availability of and the access to good medicines and of good quality and safe medicines and health products. I'm going to highlight a bit more the strategic direction that we're going to take on one of the next slides, so I'm not going to go into details on the vision and mission here. Some key figures of the EDQM are shown on this slide. The EDQM is composed of 9 administrative entities with more than 400 staff members, all based in Strasbourg and coming from a wide variety of nationalities and professions. We have 2 sites that we operate from. The main site is in Strasbourg, as already mentioned, and we have a contingency site, as we call it, in Metz, where we store the reference standards that we can use and ship from Metz in case something happens to the site in Strasbourg and we can no longer deliver those essential products to the pharmaceutical companies out of Strasbourg. The areas of work cover medicinal products, substances of human origin, pharmaceutical care and consumer health, and we're going to hear about these areas later on also in the presentation. EDQM alone, as I said, has 400 staff members, but we're also working with a global network of experts, almost 2,000 of them, and they compose the more than 100 extra expert groups that support our intergovernmental structure, which is consisting of 5 intergovernmental committees, 1 treaty-based body, the partial agreement or the European Pharmacopoeia Convention, is governed by the European Pharmacopoeia Commission. And then there are steering committees covering the activities on biological standardization and certification of suitability, the acronyms you can see here on the slides. We also provide the secretariat and coordinate 2 networks. So going a bit back in history, you can see on this slide here, going back to the 50s, this was the starting point of public health protection and the emergence of the Council of Europe's role also in public health protection, when a vision was formulated around preventing divergences and the recurrence of conflicts between countries and facilitating their economic and social progress for the Council of Europe in the Treaty of London in 1950, and also promoting mutual assistance in economic, social, cultural, scientific, legal and administrative matters. Then in 1953, a major disaster hit the Netherlands with the North Sea flood, with more than 2,000 casualties, and this turned into action also at the level of the Council of Europe with an intergovernmental collaboration on public health matters, with standard setting activities that would provide for harmonized standards across the continent and therefore also facilitating mutual assistance in case of disasters and crises. And today these activities are centralized at the EDQM. Now we're going to show you a short video about the history of the EDQM over the next few minutes, and then we'll continue with the presentation.
A role forged through 60 years of cooperation, excellence and leadership. Its mission began with the birth of the European Pharmacopoeia. This was a pioneering response to a lack of common quality standards, which prevented patients accessing safe, quality medicines. This powerful single reference tool would establish and harmonize the standards for the quality and safety of medicines and their ingredients at an international level. Striving to further ensure the quality of medicines, the EDQM set up its first laboratory, which made possible the adoption of the first texts on general methods for chemical, physical, and physico-chemical analysis. The first edition of the European Pharmacopoeia was published, setting out mutually agreed standards for more than 100 essential medicines, whose supply and permanent availability were considered critical for public health. Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Switzerland and the United Kingdom ratified the European Pharmacopoeia Convention, cementing it as a key legal and scientific reality. These member states would soon be joined by many more. The European Pharmacopoeia is referenced in a directive of what was to become the European Union, making it legally binding and signaling a strong common will between the 2 organizations to achieve their shared goal of extending harmonization across the continent for the benefit of all patients. The European Pharmacopoeia, the United States Pharmacopoeia, and the Japanese Pharmacopoeia joined forces to advance pharmacopoeial harmonization across the major regions of the world. Their pharmacopoeial discussion group not only helps protect public health at a global level, but contributes to reducing the regulatory burden on manufacturers. As more biological medicines were being placed on the market, including vaccines and blood-derived medicines, the EDQM launched the Biological Standardization Program to safeguard the quality of these innovative and life-saving therapies. To meet the demand of a globalized pharmaceutical sector and the arrival of generics, the EDQM set up the certification of suitability to the European Pharmacopoeia procedure to save time and resources for the benefit of regulatory authorities and industry, as well as facilitate the management of marketing authorization applications. The EU became a party to the European Pharmacopoeia Convention, a sign of deepening cooperation and recognition of the European Pharmacopoeia's unique role. The EDQM set up the European Network of Official Medicines Control Laboratories, OMCLs. These labs are performing independent controls on medicines across Europe, pooling their state-of-the-art resources and mutually recognizing the results obtained. protecting patients from defective or falsified products. After 3 decades of success and growth, the European Pharmacopoeia Secretariat became the European Department for the Quality of Medicines, reflecting its major mission and increasing activities portfolio. With growing staff numbers and a burgeoning range of responsibilities, a new EDQM building was inaugurated in Strasbourg's European Quarter. The EDQM's mission again expanded, going beyond medicines to include substances of human origin, pharmaceutical care and consumer health. To reflect this expanded mandate, the EDQM became the European Directorate for the Quality of Medicines and Healthcare. The Council of Europe and the EU signed a first agreement in the area of blood, marking the first in a series of many more co-funded programs. These programs today include the fields of tissues and cells and organ transplantation. Drawing on the experience of the OMCL network, the EDQM created the Official Cosmetics Control Laboratories, OCCLs, a network of independent laboratories tasked to protect consumers from the potential dangers of substandard cosmetic products. The EDQM established the network of national focal points on travel for transplantation to collect data on illicit transplantation procedures performed outside the framework of a domestic transplantation. The EDQM started to build a contingency storage and distribution site to help guarantee the ability to supply reference substances in the event of a major incident at its main Strasbourg site. As the COVID-19 pandemic swept across the globe, the EDQM ensured the continuity of its operations, and especially of critical activities necessary to secure the supply of medicines. Pharmacopoeia reference standards continued to be distributed globally, allowing manufacturers to continue supplying medicines. Together with its partners, the EDQM helped ensure the development of COVID-19 vaccines in the shortest possible time, providing technical support to vaccine developers and contributing to stemming the tide of the pandemic by releasing billions of doses of the vaccines onto the market at a global scale through its Official Controls Authority's batch release network. The European Parliament and European Council reach a political agreement on the new EU regulation on blood tissues and cells. The regulation makes reference to the EDQM Blood and Tissues and Cells Guides, underscoring the long-standing cooperation between the EDQM and the European Union. The EDQM today remains true to its vision and as committed as ever to advancing public health in Europe and beyond, together for better health for all.
So I think we're back on track. So I'm going to cover now for the next few slides the main activities of the EDQM together with my colleague Laurent Mallet. Just to see on the overview here again the four product areas, the policy areas that we are active in. The historical one with which the activities of the European Pharmacopoeia and the EDQM started are the ones on medicinal products, with the European Pharmacopoeia as one of the key elements of our work. Also supporting the quality of active ingredients and other ingredients in medicines is the certification scheme, certificates of suitability, and the control of medicines through the network of official medicines control laboratories. And we'll go through these elements a bit in more detail on the next slides. The substances of human origin area of work came to the EDQM with some of the intergovernmental committees, as was outlined also in the video, in the 2007 to 2009 timeframe. Here we look also at setting quality and safety standards, collecting data for member states, and also improving the quality systems and capacity building of blood and tissues and cells establishments. In fact, I can maybe just mention here at this point that this delegation was attending also a conference yesterday hosted by the EU Commission on the new European Union regulation on blood tissues and cells, which is a legislation that also makes reference to the EDQM as an expert body. Two additional areas also were coming to the mandate of the EDQM in 2007 to 2009, which are the pharmaceutical care and consumer health activities, where in both areas we also look at setting standards for the safe use of medicines, and we cooperate also to combat the falsification of medical products, an important public health area. And in consumer health, we look at the safety standards for cosmetics, tattoo inks, and food contact materials, and also the control of cosmetics through the official cosmetic control laboratory. Now, Laurent Mallet is now going to introduce to you some of the activities in the medicinal product and substance of human origin area.
So I will go directly to the slides presenting the different activities, the examples. So the first one is about the European Pharmacopoeia. Sorry, do you want me to? Sorry, Petra.
Yeah, I think we have to take this back.
Okay,
I apologize for the hiccup. It is my mistake because there are a few other slides that we wanted to share with you before coming to the examples. So it's my fault, Laurent, not to worry. So first of all, I think it's important to say that besides setting standards, as illustrated on the left-hand side of this slide, we also look into helping member states in implementation of those standards, putting them into practice. So this affects both the control testing and capacity building activities on the member state level. There's the activity of market surveillance studies, where we collaborate with the member states through a network of laboratories, and we also do the control testing, for example, for vaccines, which is independently from the manufacturers of those products. We also put in place a number of training programs and external assessment studies to build capacity in member states, and we conduct audits to identify any gaps and help member states then also address those gaps identified in the audits. And we have another video for you before we come to the examples, and this is a snapshot of what the EDQM does for public health.
At the heart of public health in Europe and beyond. The European Directorate for the Quality of Medicines and Healthcare, EDQM, works every day to ensure that none of us has to worry about the quality and safety of the medicines and other health products we take, the cosmetics we use, or even the coating on the bowls we eat from. To do so, we develop state-of-the-art standards, guidelines and policies, and work hand in hand with our professional community to put them into action, so we can all have peace of mind. By setting those state-of-the-art quality and safety standards, which are applied by authorities, industry, or healthcare professionals, people in Europe and beyond can benefit from safe and good quality products and practices wherever they are. Just like the European Pharmacopoeia, a regional and increasingly global reference for quality standards for medicines. And whether it's a life-saving organ transplant or a blood transfusion for a seriously ill patient, we establish quality and safety requirements and ethical principles that help ensure the best outcomes while upholding dignity and human rights to protect donors and recipients. Or when it comes to testing cosmetic products we all buy in shops or online, our network of laboratories pools scientific expertise and know-how from across Europe to survey their quality, so we can trust that everyday items like shampoos and skincare are safe for us all to use. Beyond the standards we develop, the market surveillance studies we conduct every year play a crucial role in identifying and addressing potential health risks that cosmetics, medicines, or blood products can have for patients and consumers. We conduct audits, studies, and training sessions to facilitate the implementation and use of our standards and to build knowledge within the professional community. And from the global to the local, our pharmaceutical care recommendations and guidance set quality and safety standards for community and hospital pharmacies that we can depend on for the appropriate and safe use of medicines. Advancing access to safe and quality medicines and health products informs our every step. Because everyone deserves to know that their health is in safe hands, the EDQM never stops forging a path towards better health for all.
Thank you, Petra. So I will continue with presenting a little bit more in details the examples. So the first one is the European Pharmacopoeia, which is a catalog of elements related to documentary standards. We have 2,800 documentary standards for the quality control of medicines, covering the whole manufacturing process. It includes all stages of the life cycle of a medicine, from development to production and market surveillance. So it's the first part which is important in the composition of the European Pharmacopoeia. And the second part is also the reference standards, which are shipped into more than 132 countries. And we have approximately 3,000 reference standards so far. So our activities include laboratory, production, storage, and distribution related to these reference standards. The European Pharmacopoeia is binding in the 39 signatory states of the European Pharmacopoeia Convention and used as a reference worldwide. And we have 33 observers from all continents who are also observers at the European Pharmacopoeia Commission. Regarding the governance of the European Pharmacopoeia, we have two governance bodies, the European Pharmacopoeia Commission, which is a treaty-based body, and several experts groups related to the European Pharmacopoeia Commission. And the second one is the Biological Standardization Steering Committee, which is related to the Biological Standardization Program, which is about the generation and calibration of biological reference preparation, as well as development of new methods, particularly in the field of 3Rs to replace animal testing. So this biological standardization activity is also a cooperation with the European Union. The next one is the certification of suitability procedure to the European Pharmacopoeia monographs. So it includes both assessment of files as well as GMP inspection of manufacturing sites and brokers, distributors. So far, we have generated 6,000 valid CEPs for 1,250 sites covered worldwide, which approximately also are allocated for 56% in India and China. CEPs are widely accepted in 39 member states and beyond. For example, Australia, Canada, also in Africa, Singapore, South Africa, Taiwan, FDA, WHO. In total, it covers more than 70 countries. The certificate of suitability, which is in fact the procedure, at the end you have an issuance of a certificate. The goal is to, this document is issued by EDQM to a manufacturer, certifying that the quality of the active substance meets the requirement of the relevant European Pharmacopoeia monographs. And it facilitates the marketing authorization file at the end. The next example is the OMCL network for official medicine control laboratories. So it's a network which has been created in 1994, as you have seen in the previous video. It includes a number of different associated networks. For example, the Official Control Batch Release Network, or OCARB, which is in fact an activity of release of biological medicinal products, such as vaccines, which are independently tested from manufacturers. And also there is a review of the protocol of the results of the manufacturers. The results are mutually recognized within the EU by all the member states. And for example, we have tested more than 24,000 lots and released them in 2023. It has been an instrumental activity as well for the testing and the batch release of the COVID-19 vaccines during the pandemic, where we have tested more than 3,700 batches, representing billions of doses of vaccines which were used in Europe but also in the rest of the world. This network is composed of 67 laboratories in 41 countries, and it has also activities such as market surveillance testing, so post-market surveillance testing program, for example, for centrally authorized products at the EU level, at the EMA level, where we have issued, we have tested more than 600 centrally authorized products up to now. We are also doing capacity building through this network of laboratories, with audits, training programs, proficiency testing, guidance documents which are drafted by the network, and we also exchange confidential information, such as some information related to falsification of medicines. We have conducted so far 220 external quality assessments and more than 190 audits. So we have this OMCL network, which is in fact governed by an advisory group, and we have several working groups, and it's related to the EU and EEA geographical footprint. The next slide is about the substance of human origin. It's also another activity, so it's governed in that case by intergovernmental committees. So we have two committees in this field. One is about blood transfusion, the CDPTS, which is the intergovernmental committee related to this activity. And the second one is the CDPTO, about organ transplantation, but also tissues and cells transplantation. These two committees are conducting activities in the field of standard setting with resolution and recommendation and technical standards. And Petra mentioned previously the guides that will be referred into the new EU BTC legislation, which are in fact the blood guide and the tissues and cell guide. Marie-Laure will come back to the cooperation with the EU later. We have also monitoring data and practices with annual data collection about, for example, the use of blood and blood components, and also vigilance activities with the EU. We are also conducting capacity building activities in the field of blood transfusion and transplantation with blood quality management with a BQM program with assessment scheme and blood proficiency testing scheme, which are also useful for the blood establishments, and some training activities as well. The main objective of these committees and of these activities are to ensure quality and safety of blood and blood components, organ tissues and cells for transplantation, and application of ethical principle as well, which is very important in this field. You have some example of our flagship publication on the screen with the 3 guides in the field of blood components, tissues and cells, and organ transplantation. I'll give back the floor to Petra.
Thank you, Laurent, and we'll come to the next part of this presentation, which covers the current challenges, the future initiatives and strategic goals of the EDQM. And I'll just give you a snapshot of the environment that the EDQM is operating in. There are some key elements and challenges listed here on this slide. There's on the one side, for example, the fact that there is still a large unmet medical need for some diseases where no treatment is available at the moment, and also emerging diseases and public health emergencies that are threatening whole populations. There are economic developments and also societal and digital environmental trends that affect the EDQM and its public health mandate. There are crises that may impair the business continuity of operations and also of those institutions that we are providing standards for. Environmental issues are increasingly in the focus of the attention of the EDQM and I think all organizations. And we're also dealing with an emerging legislative landscape, mainly the one in the EU. And you heard reference to the new EU BTC legislation, but I guess you're also aware of the fact that the pharma legislation is also changing in the EU. We also need to look at the capacity and capabilities of our staff, of our experts that we are working with, and finally looking at new and emerging technologies that we need to use on the one side or that we need to provide standards on, and continuously also looking for the risk for quality, safety and supply, misuse and falsification to safeguard populations against these risks. Now, with the new strategy and the 60th anniversary, we had launched the idea of an anniversary conference that we held just a few weeks ago in Strasbourg. And this conference included some of the aspects that you saw on the previous slide, with, for example, topics covered such as environmental sustainability, also the rise of artificial intelligence in health. There was a very interesting presentation on 3D bioprinting, how to harness the power of collaboration public health to address all these challenges, and how health is going digital in many aspects. The last presentation that I wanted to flag here was about gene therapy in health, and here the presentation focused also on the challenge of affordability of these gene therapies, which might be available, scientifically available, but not necessarily available because they are too expensive for some of the patients that are in need of those. Now you see here the picture of the group that attended the conference. We had more than 400 on-site participants, and there was also a live streaming of the event. If you're interested maybe in some of the presentations or the sessions, they are also available online after the conference. So with that, I'm just going to flag shortly the strategic elements that form our strategic framework for the next 4 years, 2024 to 2027, with the vision that may go beyond this time frame. Our vision that we formulated is Together for Better Health for All. You have heard it mentioned already in the videos and some of the materials that we are producing. So the vision is really focusing on the fact that our work is the result of collaboration. It's not something that we can do by ourselves. We rely on this network of experts, on collaboration also with a wider stakeholder world. And we believe that a culture of cohesion is supporting this collaboration. And our experts, in turn, they recognize this value of working together with the EDQM and contributing to better health. So we just not only focus on protecting public health, we also strive and work for a world where everyone can enjoy better health. And this is also an element of the strategy that we increasingly think global. The work we do is focusing on Europe as a continent and the membership of the Council of Europe. But what we do also has an impact increasingly globally because the standards we are setting are also a reference in regions outside of Europe. So we see an increasing impact also beyond the European continent. Now, the mission is to contribute to public health protection by engaging with an international community of experts and stakeholders. Again, we are not only focused on medicines and quality standards. The activities of the EDQM have increased both in scope and in magnitude. So we also have to acknowledge that our activities have a significant impact on public health. And for this, again, we work together. We actively embrace this culture of cooperation through, for example, global networks. And together with these experts and other stakeholders, we form a strong community that helps achieve the mission of the EDQM. The strategic objectives are listed on this slide, 7 in total, and they deal with responsiveness and global outreach. I'll go to these into a bit more detail over the next 2 slides. I'm just going to flag a bit more information on the other objectives here. The first one being number 3, stakeholder engagement. Here we focus on actively engaging with our stakeholders to increase trust and credibility, but also to improve decision making and ensure the sustainability of the organization. Again, this is a testament of the fact that we cannot achieve our mission, our activities cannot be successful without this collaboration with our stakeholders. Sustainability is one of the strategic objectives, I think, of any organization, I guess, these days. We need to ensure that the EDQM remains sustainable by future-proofing our operations and activities, and this includes, in our case, both environmental but also financial sustainability. Under this objective, we also summarize activities that we do by setting standards for our stakeholders that support sustainable practices. The 5th objective deals with modernization. Here it's a focus on the working methods at the EDQM, which should be modernized to increase the quality and efficiency of our contribution to public health. As an expert organization, we also need to focus on developing our people. This is another objective. It's not only the people, but also the teams and the organizational culture that needs to evolve to achieve our goals. And last but not least, we have defined an objective on a culture of service, which we want to establish and enhance within the EDQM, and also in collaboration or in the interactions that we have with our outside world, with our stakeholders. Now, the first objective on responsiveness is really an objective that deals with this emerging environment and emerging public health challenges and priorities. So we want to be reactive and respond to and address these challenges and priorities for the benefit of patients and consumers. And for this, we will develop a responsive portfolio of activities and products to facilitate access to medicines and health products, including, for example, exploring and identifying opportunities for expanding and diversifying our portfolio of reference substances by extending the scope of the certification of suitability procedure, by strengthening the official control or cosmetic control laboratory network, and contributing to addressing shortages. As you may know, this is also very high on the priority list of the European Union, with all the activities around the European Medicines Agency and the European Commission, with the recent launch of the Critical Medicines Alliance, which, by the way, the EDQM is also a participant of. We will also look at establishing a mechanism to identify and analyze challenges. So that's a move to a more proactive approach by implementing strategic foresight and horizon scanning. The second objective that I'm going to highlight a bit more is the global outreach. I think you have heard already during the presentation that it's Europe and beyond. So we look at enhancing the global outreach and the impact of the EDQM beyond the membership of the Council of Europe. This is already the case today. We realize, for example, that we have a number of countries being observers to the European Pharmacopoeia Commission. We have a lot of countries that rely or accept certificates of suitability, so there is already an impact beyond. But we see that this could be increased and enhanced over the next years. We'll focus on, first of all, developing a strategy that we need to develop to outline the role of the EDQM in global convergence and harmonization initiatives, and how we position ourselves as key public health organization more on a global level. We want to increase the global reliance on EDQM standards. I mentioned the European Pharmacopoeia, the Certificate of Suitability. So this is an element that we are working on with concrete projects. We also look at further supporting the elaboration of globally harmonized standards and promoting reliance on them. That's, for example, through the Pharmacopoeia Discussion Group, which is an element of cooperation with pharmacopoeias in the United States, Japan, and India. And we also look at developing a training and knowledge sharing strategy towards our stakeholders. So these are some of the strategic objectives and key initiatives that we want to implement over the next few years. If you're interested in learning a bit more about the medium-term strategy, you can find a QR code on this slide, and it leads you to the document of the midterm strategy of the EDQM. So now with that, I'm going to hand over to Marie-Laure, my colleague, and she will explain a bit more about the partnership with the European Union and its benefits for the European citizens.
Thank you, Petra. Sorry. Yeah, the mic is on. Yeah, great. So good morning, everyone on site and online. So we'll now explore a bit further the partnership between the EU and the EDQM, how it has evolved over the years and the positive impact it has on European citizens across the EU, but beyond the EU, as you may have understood now that our global outreach goes beyond the EU border. So on the next slide, I would like first to recall that togetherness and, in other words, engaging stakeholders has always been at the core of our mission in advancing public health, and this was already highlighted by our director. So we are cooperating with a wide range of stakeholders in a multifaceted manner, starting with national authorities, which extends to health ministry, licensing authorities, inspectorate, control laboratories, but also SOHO authorities or consumer health authorities from Council of Europe member state and observer. And those authorities are involved in our governing structure as delegate, but also in our expert group. We also do cooperate with operators, frontline actors like pharmaceutical company, industry association. We have also healthcare professionals, pharmacists, and so on, and they are also involved in our expert group. We also do collaborate with universities and academia who play a role in developing new standards that keep pace with innovation. We also engage with international pharmacopoeias such as the United States, Japan and Indian pharmacopoeia via the so-called pharmacopoeia discussion group, which contribute to the global discussion on harmonizing the quality and safety of medicines. And lastly, we have a strong partnership with international and European public health organizations such as the WHO, the EU body like the European Commission, the European Medicine Agency, and ECDC. So I know that the Council of Europe is often confused with the European Council of the EU, and we felt it was maybe interesting that we highlight the distinct but complementary role of the Council of Europe and the European Union in promoting shared values across Europe. So briefly recalling, and it was already mentioned, that the Council of Europe was founded in 1949 after the Second World War to prevent such conflict reoccur. And the main driver of the Council of Europe are to raise awareness about democracy, human rights and rule of law, but also advance those values in our member state. The EDQM is part of the Council of Europe and focuses on advancing quality and safety of medicine and health products. On the other hand, the EU was established in 1957, includes 27 member states with a population of almost 450 million. And the EU main driver are not the same as ours. They are on political and economic integration, and they focus mostly on developing, as you may know, supranational legislation and funding initiative. And our counterpart is DG Santé, the Directorate General for Health and Food Safety, which is developing EU legislation, coordinating national oversight, and funding EU action. Moving on the cooperation between the Council of Europe and the EU. So the cooperation started very informally in the 70s, 80s, and have over the years formalized. So I'm not going to go through all the arrangement that's set a framework for cooperation, but mostly focus on the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, which was established between the two organizations in 2007. Thanks a lot, Laura. The MOU represents a comprehensive framework of cooperation between our two organizations. And the goal of this MOU is to make sure that both organizations benefit from each other's expertise, competences, and strength, and make better use of their existing resources and search for added value. So now moving to the cooperation in the field of public health. The cooperation started informally in the 70s, and then the first milestone was the European Pharmacopoeia being referenced and recognized as legally binding in the EU legislation, both the human and veterinary legislation. Then, almost a decade later, we prepared the adhesion of the EU to the European Pharmacopoeia Convention. Then in 1991, the first co-funded project between our two organizations occurred in the field of biological standardization. And then in 1994, the EU became a party to the European Pharmacopoeia Convention. Moving on, in 1994, so another cooperation project was set up dealing with the OMCell network, which intensified our cooperation. And then with a new or amended EU legislation was set up in 2001, and the EU pharmaceutical legislation maintained the legally binding character of the European Pharmacopoeia. Then in 2004, the EU pharmaceutical legislation was again amended, and this time, at this time, recognized the EDQM certification and the inspection scheme, which were introduced previously by Laurent, as well as the official control authority batch relief, OCABR, for the biological medicines. And then in 2010, we extended our cooperation in the field of blood transfusion, and now we have about 7 agreements in the field of SOHO. Now, just to conclude on this cooperation, so this is characterized by, and we could characterize this cooperation by saying it's strategic and agile. The EDQM has become over the years a regulatory but also a technical partner for the EU. We have been cooperating with the EU for 60 years in the field of medicinal products and 15 years in the field of SOHO. And our cooperation is articulated around 4 modalities. We have high-level dialogue since 2008. And we also have signed more than 40 agreements with the EU, where we agree on a number of technical projects which we both co-finance. We also have mutual representation, so meaning that we have experts from the EU participating in our committees and vice versa, having EDQM staff member being represented in the European Commission expert body. But last but not least, as you have heard, but also will see in a few minutes, we have a number of EDQM activities being referred into the EU legislation. So now I'm going to move into giving you a few concrete examples of our complementary role. And I will start with the complementary role between the EU and the EDQM in the field of pharmaceuticals. So on the slide, you can see the EU legislation, which is setting a framework. And then the EDQM here comes as a complementary, in complementarity. For example, we have the European Pharmacopoeia being referred into the pharmaceutical legislation, and the European Pharmacopoeia, as you have heard, is harmonizing the quality and safety requirement for medicinal products. And then you have EDQM activities supporting the implementation of this framework, both the EU but also the EDQM standards. And here you have the certification of suitability you have heard before, which is referred into the EU legislation. And then you have other programs like the biological standardization program, the terminology standard term program, which are co-financed, and last but not least, the OMCEL network, which is both referred into the EU legislation, but also co-financed by the EU and the EDQM. And the result of this cooperation is as follows. So first is enabled to have an harmonized quality and safety control requirement for medicines throughout their life cycles. Then it allowed to enhance the efficiency for marketing authorization, because this, with the OMCEL network, we enhance the efficiency of control and release of medicines. And last but not least, we provide evidence-based information for more evidence-based policy and legislation for the EU. And the same occur in the field of substance of human origin. So here we also have the EU legislation. The first one, which is brand new, the blood tissue and cells BTC legislation, and also the organ legislation. So the EDQM standards, namely the blood guide, the tissue and cells guide, and the organ guide, are here to provide more detailed quality and safety requirements that complement the EU legislation. And again, to repeat it again, the blood guide and this tissue and cells guide are now a reference point in the blood tissue and cells legislation. Then we complement also the EU legislation by providing tools which allow stakeholders to implement the EU and the EDQM framework. So we have a number, for example, of annual report on practices in the field of blood, tissue and cells, but also organ field. And then we have a number of operational tools like the analysis of biovigilance data, but also quality management activities encompassing audits, training, and so on, which help stakeholders in the field of SOHO to implement this EU legislation and our standards. And in the same manner, so the benefit of this cooperation is that, first of all, the regulatory framework is more relevant and future-proof. We also make it more effective because we are collecting data and practices which we share with also the EU, and we support an harmonious implementation of standards through the activities as mentioned before. And again, also in the field of SOHO, we allow to have an evidence-based legislation. So, and to end my part, I would like to conclude that this new cooperation in the field of SOHO with the EU is really an example of regulatory agility. Thank you, Laurent. Where we have the EU legal framework, which is providing the main, the basis, regulatory basis, and then you have the EDQM guideline, which has been referred and which keep pace with latest development because they are revised every 2-3 years. And this allows now the EU legislation to keep pace with its time. And then we have our activities, operation activities, which support the implementation of this framework, the EU legislation and the EDQM standards. And this is a clear example of regulatory agility. So, and now I'm handing over the floor to my director for the concluding remark.
Thank you, Marie-Laure, and it's more like a conclusion on the last part about the collaboration between the EDQM and the European Union. We see it as an indispensable partnership to advancing public health for European citizens and as an added value at different levels that just were highlighted, the technical, regulatory, but also the political and society levels. There are a few key elements that are listed here on the slide that support this value of the partnership between these two institutions. First of all, there is a possibility to bridge the gap between stakeholders and EU legislators by EDQM playing a role in connecting stakeholders with EU legislators and supporting the practical application of EU legislation and promoting a unified framework across Europe. There's also the element of ensuring coherent approaches with the EDQM promoting coherent strategies at EU and pan-European level. We see it as a possibility to optimize resources and expertise. The complementarity was also mentioned earlier. So the EDQM maximizes the use of resources, expertise and competencies and also its strengths to achieve its goals. For the EU legislation, it was already mentioned that the EDQM will be referenced in the EPTC legislation. And this is an element of providing timely state-of-the-art standards, like the guides that have been repeatedly mentioned in the area of SOHO. And so the EDQM helps stakeholders meet the requirements set down in EU legislation by applying these unified standards. There's also a possibility to develop evidence-based legislation with the EDQM contributing to the creation of evidence and risk-based legislation policies, adhering to the principles of better regulation. And an element that is also linked to the membership of the Council of Europe that goes beyond the European Union is the possibility to support candidate and partner countries. And there have been projects illustrating that potential in the past where the EDQM assists candidate, neighboring and other partner countries in implementing EU legislation. And last but not least, it is also about boosting public confidence where the EDQM works to increase citizens' trust in the European health systems through all the activities and supporting projects and initiatives that we put in place. So with that, I think we would like to conclude the part of the presentation. We thank you for your patience and we are open to any questions that you may have. And I give the floor back to Andrew for the moderation of this Q&A session.
Thank you. And is that working? Yes. Thank you, Petra and Laurent and Marie-Laure, for your very interesting and comprehensive overview of the EDQM and what it is and how it relates to the EU. I would like to ask anybody in the audience if you have any questions at this point. Yes.
We have a microphone, I think.
Thank you for your presentations. It was very useful. I'm Anna Mirabile from the European Association of Hospital Pharmacists. And yes, I have a few questions. I might have missed something, so the European Pharmacopoeia is not composed of guidelines per se. Is it right? So, okay. So the Pharmacopoeia is binding while the guidances are not, but they are taken into account. Is that correct? Is my understanding correct?
Okay, maybe we can take that. The European Pharmacopoeia is a legislation. It is binding in its member states, in the member states of the European Pharmacopoeia Convention, which are the member states of the European Union, plus 12 additional member states of the Council of Europe to make the 39 that we referred to in our presentation. So all of the EU countries are among the 39 member states of the European Pharmacopoeia Convention. Parties are all parties to the convention. So by that, the European Pharmacopoeia, we call them standards, but they are more like monographs. So the components of the European Pharmacopoeia are individual monographs or general chapters dealing, for example, with general methods or approaches, or also finished products. So there are monographs on individual substances, on active ingredients, on other ingredients, and also general chapters that deal more with the practices and the control of medicines. So this is one element. The guidelines, the guides that are mentioned mentioned in the presentations, they are guidelines. They are not legislation as such, but they are referred to into the EU BTC legislation as this is the way how you should document. And this is making them guidelines still, but referenced in legislation.
Perfect, thank you. And another question is, would it be possible to share the slides with the attendees after because they were really useful? Thank you.
Absolutely, yes, yeah, sure.
Lady at the back, did you have a question or? No. Okay. Well, if that's all of your questions answered, then I think we'll end at that point. And thank you very much again to all of the presenters and to you for coming and for those who followed it online. Thank you.
No questions online?
I don't think. Could you just check, Anka? No.
Okay. In this case, I would have one question.
Okay. One further question from the floor. If you could please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Andriza, as head of Brussels office. I have two short questions. It has been mentioned that EDQM has a role in the field of counterfeiting medical products. Which tools are at your disposal, and do you have an impact outside the European continent in this field? And the second short question is how many countries accept the certification of medical products by or under EDQM?
Okay.
To be more concrete about the global or external outreach of the EDQM. Thank you.
Yeah. So I will answer to the first question about falsified medicines. So we have a first part of this activity, which is related to the official medicine control laboratories. So they are conducting post-marketing surveillance activities, so they can detect potentially falsified medicines through this activity. We are also conducting sharing of technical know-how expertise, so capacity building for this OMCL across the network by doing some trainings, hands-on training, but also some PTS, proficiency testing scheme like studies to detect suspicious products. So it's to bring them to the right level to detect, for example, some unknown components in some products we will share with them in a blinded study. We are conducting also some workshops to train inspectors within Europe, as well with the other activities, the CMED committee, which is under the CDPPH, which is one of the activities. So it's a workshop for communication to inspectors about falsified medicine, to make sure that they have knowledge about that. We have also a database to share the cases that have been detected. For example, we have the NOIX database, which is more than 4,600 OMCL cases reported about falsified medicines so far. So we are sharing this information, and we are also organizing symposia to make sure that we have exchange within the network about the different case of falsified medicines. So I have an example, for example, which has been detected recently by one of our OMCL in Germany about Ozempic. You know, it's the pen for diabetes, which have been falsified and which have been detected by the laboratory. And you have a substance which is different from the active substance which is supposed to be in these pens for diabetes treatments. And they are particularly a target for falsification because it's often used for other use in a way which are weight loss, and it's not really the application of this substance, of course, of this medicine, and they are particularly the target for falsification because you have some pressure on the market, and then you can have some falsification which are detected by our OMCL network particularly.
The second question was about the outreach and the certification. The certificates of suitability, that's what you're referring to as the certification, they are relied upon, used or recognized in around 70 countries globally. So there are obviously the 39 member states of the European Pharmacopoeia Convention, but there are still many more to result into this total of 70 that take this work into consideration. So it's really an element of also efficient regulation and using of resources. That the activity that has been performed by the EDQM is relied upon or used by those regulators outside of the membership of the Council of Europe. And it's increasing. We have contacts with regulatory authorities on at least 2 continents at the moment where individual countries and regulators are considering including the certification in their regulatory frameworks and considering relying on it in the future. So that gives us also confidence that we will be able to achieve the objective of an increased outreach in this element of certification. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more question from the floor.
Just a minor clarification. You said that all the member states of the EU are part of the European Pharmacopoeia Convention, and that the EU as well is a member. Is it a full member with voting rights or an observer member, so it's in a similar situation as the one of the European Convention of Human Rights, just also to understand if there are the same issues applying also to this case?
A very good question, thank you. The EU is a member, so it's a full member. There is in this protocol that has been signed to the convention, the EU votes on non-technical matters on behalf of the EU in the European Pharmacopoeia Commission in this decision-making body. But on technical matters, the member states vote. So this is the split, let's say, of the tasks of the decision-making at the level of the EU versus the member states, non-technical and technical matters.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, thank you.
And just to clarify about the Human Rights Convention, the EU is not a signatory to the Human Rights Convention.
Yes.
It's a commitment under the Lisbon Treaty, obviously, but we're not there yet. It's discussions are ongoing.
Yes, I know.
Okay, thanks again to all of the panelists and to those people in the room and for those people following online, and of course to our hosts, the Brussels Press Club, who I forgot to mention earlier. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.